هلو، اسبوع جديد لايك مايندد جاذرينج جديد. بتعرفوا لايك مايندد هن العالم اللي بيفكروا مثلكم والعالم اللي بيكونوا هيك حواليكم و you are the average of the 5 people you interact with the most. فبعتقد هيدي اكثر مره انا بتضحك فيها قبل السيشن مع نادين سامر.
hopefully during كمان.
basically لانه نحن رفقه وصلنا كثير زمان. نادين اسمر يلي ما بيعرفها she's an expert. سوري حلو، ماني عامل ميوت ليوتيوب خطر. هيدا الايفكت تبع نادين. سو نادين
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday
هلا هابي بيرثداي لسامر
to you.
ولا أندري
أندري جمعة الجاي. جود. سو بدي اقول لكم انه نادين تعرفت عليها بماوغلي اكسبيرينس. كان اول مره نعمل ايفنت فور منتورز اند انتربرينورز، وكانت بارت اوف ماوغلي مع باري تاك، وكان ايفنت كثير حلو. من وقتها تعرفت على نادين بطريقه بروفيشنال وكمان فن. ومن وقتها كنا ضلينا ان كونتاكت. نادين كثير بتسافر لبرا، بتحكي عن المنتورشيب وكمان سوشيال انتربرينورشيب، سوشيال امباكت وانوفيشن. هلا رح تحكي اكثر عن هذا الموضوع. هي امباكت ليدرشيب فاسيليتيتور اند كوتش. نادين رح اقول لك تعرفي عن حالك كمان اكثر، ورح اقول قبل ما تعرفي عن حالك اول مره بيطلع معنا توني فغالي، فبدي اقول لك توني اهلا وسهلا فيك.
هاي توني.
هاي توني.
وين ستاربكس؟
وين ستاربكس؟ جود. نادين لإلك، وبعدين رح تعملوها بين بعضكم انت وسامر. سو بعرف عن سامر.
عارف عن سامر. حلو.
يلا سامر مثل ما حكيت انه صديق كمان. he's a social entrepreneur. He's the founding members للبنانيز social entrepreneurs association. عم يشتغلوا على هذا الموضوع. كمان هو he's a serial social entrepreneur. فبتشوفوا انه عنده كثير فينتشرز خاصه بالسوشيال انتربرينورشيب. هلا بخبر عنها كمان. انا بالنسبه لي في مره حدا دق قال لي who is your favorite social entrepreneur؟ قلت له ما راح افكر مرتين، سامر سفير. وعملنا ايفنت لسامر بعدين اونلاين، رح تشوفوا شو عملنا فيديو لسامر for one of his initiatives. هلا رح اعطي كل الوقت لنادين وسامر. impact ventures. نادين رح تحكي the part of the professional الكونسبت. رح تحكي كثير اشياء. بعدين سامر رح يحكي عن البراكتيكال stuff from his own journey. اكيد كمان نادين رح تحكي براكتيكال، بس انه سامر from his own journey كمان. نادين لك.
بس قبل ما نبلش thank you so much Andre. It's great to be here. قبل ما نبلش بدي اطلب من الكل to unmute yourself. Thank you Tony. الكل unmute. Thanks نور. الكل please. نادين، جمال، ليا، بيير، جو. And 1 2 3 happy birthday لسامر to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Summer. Happy birthday to you.
كده وياه. ميرسي للكل.
So on that note رح نبلش on how to create impact. So it's Friday afternoon. It's a joyful moment. So let's have fun. Thanks Andre for the introduction. I'll go straight to the meat. أنا super passionate. مثل ما التقينا أنا وأندري ب 2011. So مش من زمان. And it was only the start, igniting spark moment لإلي. And since then I've been blessed to strive to build capacity للأشخاص in a holistic way. So لإلي ما بفصل إذا بدكم the emotion from the rational, the business from the relationship. So all of this is the idea of impact, is also impact venture, and working with them is how to equip them with a human-centered approach. So definitely the idea why we do this is if we can create positive impact, then we have a better chance in game to sustain our venture in the world and hence guarantee solution-driven. Hi, Adrian. Great to have you here. So So for me, I'm super passionate about it. Since then, I'm a lead facilitator, كملنا مع INSEAD and IH methodology, applying a scale up for impact internationally and locally. So I'm super happy to share with you that. أكيد الكلمة كتير تستعمل, but there are sometimes confusion of what impact economy means. I'm going to share my screen for those who like to see it while we're talking. Let me know if you don't. So for those who like books, وما راح أزهقكم into if you want books, but Adam Smith is the reference for when we talk about economy, the science of economy. In his first book, Wealth of Nations, what he says, he starts with the theory and we're all selfish. So as selfish, we go to capture, we want to capture value, so we want to gain, we want to make profit, rather than create value, meaning نخلق قيمة مضافة. So usually when you do so, you don't care necessarily if it has negative effects. So I might do some innovation, but pollute the environment. And when we do so, the first theory, what he says is, I activated a need. Think of iPhone. So no one wanted iPhone. Now we all have an iPhone and think, I cannot live without the iPhone. So the idea of activating a need that is not needed rather than solving a problem is, I want to make profit, I want to innovate, I want to capture value, and doesn't care about the negative spillover. There's pollution, dependency, the phone being obsolete. And of course, I'm not talking about also when it comes to how we treat the workers in some countries to make more profit. So when we do so, creating, if you want, value and capturing value through product and services in order to share the profits, in order also to distribute dividend, I need to have a company. In order to control the market too, I need a company, and I want to make sure that I gain as much shares as possible. So that's his first theory. But the second, he's misunderstood sometimes. And the second is the theory of moral sentiments by Adam Smith. In this book, he's saying, no, we're not selfish, we're altruist, whereby we're here to create value. And not, when I say create value for society, by solving problems in the society, and hopefully with the solution, we're embedding the solution and empowering the individual within. So if I'm sharing a book, is not to share a book, but to say that there are different approaches to seeing life and ventures. I'll give you an example on an impact venture before. You have Muhammad Yunus, who was the Nobel Peace Prize winner and a big reference with his book, A World of Three Zeros. He noticed in Bangladesh, for example, traditional banks didn't want to support individuals that are poor, that are high risk to default. So he saw a big chance to give these individuals the money, and he believed that it's a viable model. So what he did to solve it, he gave money to groups of women, not men, because men tended to spend them, and group of women so they don't have the pressure of giving the money for their family or husband. And how we solved the problem, going back to the theory of altruism, is by breaking the cycle of poverty. And they started new businesses and sent their kids to school. So I'm giving you this example and showing you, if you want, these two different ways of seeing the world. And I would like to ask from you, you could unmute or put on chat, do you think we're selfish or selfless altruists? What do you think? I could see that on the chat. So selfish, yes, thanks, Andre. What do you think? Are we selfish or altruist? Selfish, Walid. Interesting. It's good to be honest, both. Thanks, Nadine. And we're going to stretch that topic gradually, and even with Samer. We might be altruist, but are we altruist individually, or are we altruist also collaboratively? And we'll talk about it later with Samer. On that note, stretching and finding you yourself who are here with us on Zoom or on Facebook, It's great to have you. I'm going to share a video. Maybe if you can, Andre, share the video I sent you, please. Have a look at the video, and then we'll share. You tell me what you're hearing and seeing. It's muted, Andre. We can't hear it, Andre.
You are a good person. You spend time with your family. You work out at the gym. You conserve water while showering. You like nice clothes. You give to charity. You recycle. You drive a Prius, but you use your bike when you can. You enjoy the occasional distraction at work. And you always send a card on Mother's Day. Always. But there's a part of you that tells yourself that you're not so good, that you could be doing more, that the world is falling apart at the seams, and all you've been doing is yoga. One day you see that the rainforest is being destroyed at a staggering rate of 32 million acres a year. That's the equivalent of one football field every 78 seconds. You feel bad, angry, guilty. You've been apathetic for too long. You want to do something about it. You must do something about it. Well, this is what you're not going to do. I quit! You're not going to quit your job, leave your family, get on the next flight to Nicaragua, take a bus to the edge of the jungle, then hoof it across rivers, lakes, and streams on a quest to the very heart of the rainforest. Take me to the heart of the rainforest.
You're getting closer. You're almost there. You have arrived.
You're not going to ingratiate yourself with the local tribesmen, go to great lengths to earn their respect and trust. No. It is around now you realize you're living out the cliche gringo fantasy of becoming an honorary native and leading the resistant forces. But screw it. If they could do it, so can you. I'm gonna save you! This guy comes over here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pull a zap thing, that's right through him, right over here. You're not gonna coordinate and occupy the rainforest movement. Realize it's hopeless. Summon the power of the gods. Lead a revolution against the deforesters and their multinational employers in an apocalyptic once-and-for-all battle to save humanity. Only to awaken 2 days later in an El Salvadorian hospital with 2 toes missing on your left foot. Oh, Siri, I want to go home. Hobble out of Central America, up through Mexico, across the Sierra Madre, where you break down, have your first cigarette in 4 years, accidentally start a wildfire, killing off the endangered species that once served as your occupational distraction, finally make it back home, only to find you've been replaced at work by a guy named TJ, and that things at home are not what they used to be. You're not going to do any of these things, but what you can do is follow the frog. Buying Rainforest Alliance certified products ensures the future of our rainforests, so that you don't have to do the things you shouldn't do anyway.
Great, thanks, Andre. I love this video. I could see it many times, but what do you think? What did you see? What did you notice? What's the message behind that video? You can unmute and say it or put it on the chat. Anyone? Thanks, Andre.
Anna,
we all, yes.
Anna, I didn't get the point.
Ah, okay.
It was funny, but I didn't get the point. It was funny, yani. You know, he went to save the world, but he lost everything else.
So, firstly, it's a way to show, when you want to engage and you get triggered to make a change and see so many things. And we saw him living his life and going to the Amazon at the heart. And that's the video, Dan, you remember when the Amazon was still is under fire and so on. And just saying, following the frog is all brands who are collaborating, having the tag that says, I'm protecting nature. I see Pierre is say, I see Pierre, you can do impact exactly by simply daily action and choices. Exactly, Pierre. So it's Tony, yes. So it's about, and like Andre said too, it's about each one we can be responsible citizens. Doesn't mean you have to leave our old way, old ordinary world to make an impact. So that's one way of looking at that video, and just to ignite. Yet my other question is, when I see it, I'm thinking, which one am I? Am I the guy in Amazon or the woman? Am I this guy who lives his life or part of the other initiatives that are creating impact around. Could be through collaboration, cooperation, and so on. So that's, if you want, the main message from that. So going back to, so first is great to notice where I am, who I want to be as an impact creator, enabler. Doesn't have to be me, but I'm enabling others to do so. But also, yes, more and more, and the importance of it is more and more we see people wanting to give impact, wanting a purposeful job, wanting to contribute. So it's going up like 58%. And so it's something that we all, especially these days, where we're reviewing our priority and thinking, I will need to do more. I want to have a more purposeful contribution to the world. For that, we need to define on what impact venture is. If we had more time, I would have played with that question by itself. Impact venture aims at finding solution to an important and neglected problem in society. So not like that everyone is covering and doing so on. Through sustainable solutions. So here we're not talking about an initiative and that's it. An impact venture creates a sustainable solution, creating value to mobilize resources. And here creating value, we're not talking financial. Financial could be one, but the value in society in solving the problem until the problem is solved. So the idea is when I solve it, I embed the solution in the system. This is where the problem is solved. And going back to one of the talks of André, if you have the chance to see it, which I loved about innovation, this is one way of innovating. It becomes an innovation when it proves to be working. So it could be incremental or disruptive and so on. So what impact economy is not, and this a lot of confusion is in it. Impact economy is not, for example, they tell me, I'm going to recruit a disadvantaged person. So great, I'm an impact economy. No, you are bringing them, some recruit them, but abuse their time. Maybe they don't solve their problems. They're just taking advantage. So recruiting or working with disadvantage doesn't solve a problem. So it's wrong. Impact economy is not a charity, meaning I'm going and giving money to someone poor or poorer. It's not social activism, whereby I'm doing campaigns, could be on pollution, could be on political economy, and so on. It's not impact economy. It's not either CSR, whereby a company gives a percentage of their, if you want, profit of 1 to 5% and say, we're going to sponsor that event or plant that tree. It's great, it's nice, but it's not impact economy. It's not also social economy. When an example of social economy is when you see co-ops, collaborating together. It could be from also collaboration between public and private. These are good, but they're not impact economy. They contribute positively in collaborating to create impact, but it's not completely it. And it's definitely not, which is very tough and idealistic, expecting from an impact entrepreneur being Mother Teresa and Richard Branson in one. So let's be realistic and apply, find something that is possible. An example that I really like, for example, a special Stern is a Danish foundation that started in 2004, whereby they've noticed that, for example, a neglected group of people are autists. And as you know, on the spectrum of autism, there are some who are super great in producing repetitive and very detail-oriented work. So what they did is they recruited autists, of course, that are gifted depending on the spectrum, and they became not only trained and they built their capacity and included them in the workforce, but also they became the business consultant. And they serve their, if you want, services to Microsoft and many other companies in the world. So that's an example, if you want, on impact venture. Another thing when we talk about impact venture, knowing where I am in order to know what do I need to grow, what are the challenges, and where the focus is, in order then to say I want to scale and so on and so forth. So when I'm talking entrepreneur, it's between 0 and 3 years or maybe 5, whereby when you say startup, it's not 3 months. And this is where it takes time between creating your ID, developing your ID, finding the resources, the abundant resources you have, prototyping. And this is where you need to be innovative and have really entrepreneurial qualities. So here I still didn't validate my solution as an impact venture. Then later, when I already validated it, it's stable, it's sustainable, I'm here moving to other skills that as a manager, where I have to lead an organization. And here I have to have other skill sets, having processes set, managing, partnership, creating systems. And here it's a different form, external validation in the market with stakeholders locally, internationally. And this is by doing so, it's another skill set on the founder and manager. And finally, when I'm growing and the impact is created, I want to embed it in the solution. There are different forms of bringing it into the system and there's application. I'm saying this and showing you this, and I wonder if we have some entrepreneurs in the room. You could unmute or tell us on the chat, where do you see yourself in that, or where do you see the impact ventures around you? Are they in which stage of impact life cycle?
Well, I think I've gone through it a couple of times. So, but I think the thing that is very clear is that at the beginning, when you're being the entrepreneur, and you know, it may be just that idea in your head. You have no idea about the future. You're just focusing. Your horizon is so short. And I think as you start talking about impact industries or economies, the time span is much longer, but that time span only becomes visible once you've done enough. As you talk about the external validation, that's when the time frame starts to get longer, because otherwise it's literally, I mean, anybody who started a business, the first month is the first month, and then the second month, and then the third, you know, it's a very short time frame. You don't even think about 5-year plans. You know, a long-term plan may just be 12 months. Well, that's going for some small businesses. So I think this, the timing or the horizon you can see, which is, as I understand what you're saying, you know, to be an impactful economy, you are looking long term. It's not the short term quick fix solutions. So to be able to see that for a business, you have to have gone some way before you can see the horizon, is my view.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And it's super great to see you, by the way. Yes, it's the long term, for sure, a view. And to sustain, create impact, it doesn't matter if I'm growing in profit or revenue. The important bit is sustaining and solving the problem. So that's also, and this is what we're going to look into, as you said, by the long term. Where is this? Where can I say as an impact venture, I move to the scale up phase, or I can move to the scale up phase? And that's what I'm going to share with you now. Thanks, Adrian. So in order to assess where I am and am I ready to scale or not as a venture, there are a few things to look into. And honestly, in a very simple way. But these are questions I really invite us, because our ego, our ambition stops us from stopping, or the environment around us is not questioning it. So it's an invitation for us to say, is my solution robust enough? Is it simple enough? Because sometimes when we, even in startup or scale up, the first thing we tell you, don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it a system solution. The simplest it is, as long as it has the key elements to create value, that's great. So is the business model adapted to scale? Because some rely so much on context and on number and on a specific area that it's not scale. The other thing to ask ourselves, is it relevant? Is it endorsed by all the stakeholders? Or there might be a demand, but not enough to say, I want to scale or I can scale. And of course, checking your financial model. The third point is risk. Of course, some are risk averse. Some as entrepreneurs, they say, I want to create impact. I don't care about risk. Great. But in order to learn and take a conscious risk steps and action, is asking myself, is my solution affected by the context I'm in? Did I check the barrier of entry of new markets? I'll give you an example, and I'm sure Samir can share later locally what's as an example too. So there is Nuru Energy in Rwanda, if you heard about them. They're a great example on impact ventures. We use it as a case study in INSEAD on that. He noticed that the majority in Rwanda, in rural area, are so poor, so desperate to light, which is a key energy source, that they don't have, and they are off-grid in their area, so they don't have access to electricity. So what happened is they're burning kerosene, a dirty fuel source, widely available, yet, of course, you know, it emits CO2, is a leading cause for respiratory illnesses, and causes sometimes household fire and burns. So, and he knew they were not going to have access in the near future to electricity. So what he did is he came with a very genius solution, an efficient one, where he converted human energy into usable energy. And how is that? A person can pedal anywhere they are, so they can recharge the technology he got. And here also in that solution, it's a semi-solar, by the way. So in that solution, he's also generating revenue for the one who sells it in the village and the one who's recharging it by pedaling. So it created a system and solving also other and having positive spillovers with it. So going back to the question of risk, what Nuru wanted to scale, he wanted to go to India, yet it didn't succeed much. Why? Because he didn't check about the kerosene, and kerosene was subsidized by the government in India. And hence it was very cheap, not like in Rwanda. And second thing, in India, in the culture, they used to have a lot of things for free. So his previous model that worked well in Rwanda doesn't work well in India. So he went to another model, which is philanthropy model. On another point, to assess if I'm ready to scale, is my revenue model. Is it helping me? Is it feasible, helping me at least to break even? Because as we said, for me as an impact venture, if I'm bringing profit is to bring it back and grow the impact. But if I'm sustainable and still solving a problem, then great. So I need to make sure I'm sustaining, breaking even. A second thing is looking at my resources. Do I own my resources that are key to my solution? Are they scalable? Are they abundantly available? Because for any venture, and specifically impact venture, you need to have abundant resources that are cheap in order, the one that you need to scale with, in order to make it happen. Another example, for example, in Tanzania, in Tanzania, they had a lot of mines to remove and humans were losing their life to do so. But guess what? Abundant resources existed, rats. So they used rats to demine and it worked super great. Yet rats are not exportable, and thankfully, because not in every country there's a lot to do so. An example locally like Fabric Aid in Lebanon, who kind of recycles clothes. So Fabric Aid, of course, reused clothes exist everywhere. So that's scalable already by itself. I'll come back to that example, how he's scaling to in the near future. Even like IES, the social business school I'm part and lead program with. So when we think of skills, you cannot clone people, but yet you can build and teach it. So in order to have more resources and transfer knowledge in a wider way. So by checking, am I ready? Of course, you need to check from revenue stream and resources, which one are financially viable and creating impact. And hence you would focus on the one that have high impact and high revenue and kind of discontinue the one that have low on both. And the one that are high in revenue and impact, and low in revenue, these can or be contracted or can be punctual, but not necessarily part of me where I invest time and money in it. I'll come back, Pierre, to your question. Sorry, I cannot see it at the same time. Thanks. So once I see I'm ready, then I need to check what to scale. Because the big mistake that happens is I want to scale everything. I want to duplicate, replicate. But when I do so, I start to have cost jumps. We call it, these cost jumps are not linear. So in order to decide what I want to scale, I look into first, obviously the first one is identify the alternative dominant solution. In simple terms, What's the competition? What they're doing? They might be doing partly something but have negative effect, or they're doing something different, and then I can do something else. So here, when I know what they're doing, I know my innovation space and where I can innovate and solve the problem. Obviously, the second thing, using technology to avoid these cost jumps. Like now, I mean, what Andre does here and other events yesterday. So where any training I'm doing with Ayesh and Mugli, we're doing them all online. I'm able to talk to people from Europe to Cap Verde in the same day. And that's magical, and yet it doesn't increase your cost to reach them. Another indicator, and that's super important to make sure we know it well, in order not to scale everything, have cost drops, and probably even fail or lose money and diffuse our impact, is remembering we say it in technically my minimum critical specification. Yet what it means is, in all my solution, what's the one thing that I should keep, one element that will create the value out of everything. An example, for example, in Portugal, there is an organization called Speak. Speak wanted to solve the problem of excluding migrants in Europe, and particularly in Portugal. So what they thought, in order to solve it, is connecting the refugees with the local community through classes, language, workshop and events together. And every time there's an event, he needs another facilitator or trainer or person. So there was a lot of cost. Every time he wanted to do more in the city, it was creating what we call cost jump, and is not linear. But what he's noticed, if he wants to think, okay, low cost, connectivity, learning, and so on, the most important is connectivity. And this is where he decided to put all his trainings, his session, gathering on the platform where everyone connected. And he used technology to do so. So we go back to thinking how my solution can be linear. Of course, all of you, to make it linear, to build competence of people doing train the trainers is a great solution. So instead of having one person, they have days and energy. So how can I replicate this? And that's why in the organization I'm in, we do train the trainer, and that's magnificent. You're sharing the impact, the spirit, and building the competence of people so they can reach more people. Technology for sure. Kits for the process, kits where you have your process, your classes, your courses, your materials. So anytime someone comes new, you offer it. So it becomes quicker to integrate and quicker to keep on moving. Also codification. So codification means mapping your business journey and processes. So you become more agile if you want to move to another country or more service and so on. Obviously, all of this is beautiful, but doesn't mean it's always easy. Sometimes there's lack of skills, mismatch of service and demand and growing, because we start with some competence or some aspiration as entrepreneurs, but sometimes I don't have the competence to grow it. And here there's sometimes resistance to technology, to the change. And this is where being conscious of this and dealing with it. My last two things, and I'll switch to Samer. There are different scaling models. One is scaling deep. When we say scale deep, is meaning what I give, let's say for the same group, I'll give more service for them. So I scale deep. Fabric 8, for example, his wish for the next phase is not only to take the unused clothes at the end, but he wants to kind of recycle clothes across the value chain. So it's horizontal. Scaling up is more reaching more people, maybe going to other countries. And for example, scale up, there is a project who, in order to include and give access to poor people healthy daily meals without yet giving them the dignity. So they did an ATM card, so whereby anyone who comes to buy food from their restaurant, they use it. So we don't know who has the money, who not, but have this card. So it worked pretty well. So to scale, they were asking, Should I have a bigger kitchen? Should I have another restaurant, grow a team? So if thinking this way, then this means I'll have a big cost jump. What they did is they sold the card to more restaurants other than them. So like this, they had more access to people and more restaurants, and they got it in different countries. Speak, for example, the example I told you about migrant inclusion, they did the licensing model, and now you have it in 20 countries. They plug in with the kit, they plug into the platform, and they have the flexibility to adapt it locally. Scale out, usually the third option is when the solution is sustained, is growing, is scaling, and to embed it, and I want to have it open source. I go scale out, I start advocate. I want to have it everywhere across, everywhere in the system. And here an example is Wikipedia, usually. Yeah, so risks are many in scaling, and even in these times where change is happening, we might be stretched away from our mission and vision. Sometimes investors or the urge to cover our costs takes us away from our competence and core model. Here, it's great to have the courage to stop and say, I want to make sure what I'm doing still create impact, and review the model to your minimum critical specification, to your unique element, in order not to be diverted and diffused. So yes, it takes courage to pause, and humility to be open to listen to new perspective, but yet it has its magic, and this is what impact venture, caring more to scale the solution rather than scale the organization itself. Maybe we'll open questions later, but I would love to hear from Sfeir first, to give the floor for Sfeir for local experience and successes, and I'll read the notes while Sfeir is there. Sfeir?
Yes, hi everyone. I know a lot of faces, and some of them I missed since I didn't see for several years. Basically, I'm a social entrepreneur, and my journey, it goes along with what Nadine was explaining, because we started our first social enterprise as a catering line. So it was called Mommy Made, and it then rebranded into M Social Catering. So it's a catering line that had two purposes. One, to do food, and specifically food for vulnerable communities. And second, within the enterprise, to employ vulnerable women and persons with disabilities, and then get them into jobs. So when we started, it started on a very small scale, and then we began to discuss it more and more and evolve it. And then we found that this was good, but we wanted more. We wanted something that can grow much bigger. We wanted something that can scale and support a lot of people. So after I think 4 years, from 2012 to 2016, we rethought what was good and what was scalable. And then two other social enterprises were born. The first in 2016, it's called Hum and Go. So it's hummus on the go. So basically it's a snack with hummus on one side and breadsticks on the other side. And hummus comes with different flavors. So from the food part, we learned how to do food in an innovative way. And the majority of its profits would go to support the other branch that I'm gonna speak about. We kept within M Social Catering the part that was really gold in it, which is how can we do low-cost, healthy food for vulnerable communities. And this is still ongoing. As Nadine said, we got a manager because I didn't want to manage it myself. So we got a manager to manage it. And till date, it made around 150,000 meals for vulnerable communities. 50,000 of them since the Beirut blast. And in Hum and Go, now we're planning to export. We finally became ready to export, and we're probably gonna export to Saudi Arabia and Emirates. And the scalable social enterprise, like I shouldn't be favoring my babies because I'm social catering and home and go and ProAbled are my babies, but I can't. So ProAbled is my favorite child. ProAbled is a culture changer because either you see people as disabled or you see people as professionally abled, which are ProAbled. So ProAbled is a social enterprise that aims to change the culture of society so that persons with disabilities can find jobs and live in dignity. So to achieve this, how do we do it? We decided to focus massively on society. So first, we started to open an academy where we train on a very professional level HRs on inclusive recruitment. Why to employ persons with disabilities? Why is it good for the company? So when you convince the HR and the manager that it's good for the company, then it becomes an economical need to employ persons with disabilities. Then we trained the architects and engineers. Now we have a program for architects and engineers to build buildings that are inclusive. A program for managers to build policies on how to be inclusive in a company. And on the other hand, we train persons with disabilities on work readiness skills. So basically CV, interview, how to search for jobs. This is ProAbled Academy. And ProAbled Recruit is a platform like LinkedIn, but that is dedicated for persons with disabilities or acute financial challenges. And companies can find candidates on this platform to recruit. So basically you say, I need a graphic designer that's ready to work in Beirut day shift. And you find graphic designers on the platform, and we disclose their name and phone number later on. They are graphic designers maybe with hearing impairment, with mobility impairment. So ProAbled Academy and ProAbled Recruit work together to achieve the objective of finding jobs and employing persons with disabilities. Since we started ProAbled, which is an evolution of the other social enterprises, we found the model that I personally dreamed of, which is the more you sell trainings and employment services, the more you do impact. It's not a unit that makes impact and a unit that makes money for the second unit. So since we started, the impact grew exponentially. So instead of employing 10 persons, 20 persons a year, we began to speak about employing 100 persons a year. We began speaking of training 300 to 400 persons per year. And last year only, we trained 80 of the biggest companies in Lebanon on inclusive recruitment on several of our programs. And this was so going, let's say, in the right way, because we found a need on both sides. On the economic side, on the private sector side, on the public sector side, where ministries came to us, said, we want to make MOUs with you guys because you're able to find solutions, and maybe this would translate later on, maybe in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, in more, let's say, implemented policies, not only policies. And now we're going regional. So we also found this need in other countries. Plus, we just added a component, which is an online academy. So now we train a blended solution of online and offline. So basically, this journey is still ongoing. I don't know if I personally want to go more into advocacy. We're going into this with Lebanese Social Enterprise Association, but I'm definitely think that this is not a linear thing. I think it's a loop. So you go from innovation to managing and maybe delegating managing, and hopefully inspire the public sector and private sector to change society. And then you go back to innovation. So it's V2, V3, V4. And I'll go to something that is intriguing for me. So selfish or selfless? I think it was both. Why I and my two co-founders, Eli and Chantal, started this. Simply because we were not happy with the traditional way we were doing. So I was a manager in a company, Nokia is not here anymore, but I wasn't happy. So I wanted something that makes me happy. And if making social impact to others made me happy, so it was selfish and selfless at the same time. So this was my journey with social enterprises, and it's still ongoing. Now we're moving to new horizons within Lebanon and outside of Lebanon. So I'll leave the floor if you have any questions, if you want to know more, and Andre or Nadine.
Thank you, Samer, and thank you, Nadine. It was a great discussion and session. I loved the concepts explored by Nadine, and I already, I'm an advocate for your journey, Samer. And if anyone has a question, please go ahead, ask it in the chat box or on the YouTube comments. And Nadine, if you want to go back with your, I guess there was no question. There was a comment from Pierre.
I replied on the chat to Pierre, and I have a question for Samer to encourage others to ask questions. Question to Samer: when altruist or selfish, so there's the individual, so you are the entrepreneur creating impact venture. What about collectively being altruist? Is it a yes or no? And why?
You can answer it. Well, actually, there's something maybe we need to learn more in our culture to be self-critic, is that in many cases, we're really good in doing individual or let's say small teams impact. However, when we speak about organizations, collaborations, it becomes a different thing. We're more into let's say we need to learn. We need to learn to be more collaborative. In Lebanon, personally, I think we have a journey to make. Journey where we have more trust in each other. We have more each like this. The concept of if we support each other, we'll all win. This is something that we need to learn. And in Lebanese Social Enterprise Association, this is part of the learning. It's super difficult. It's not easy. And we're not used to it. In the Lebanese culture, it's not something that is common. Changing it would take a lot of time. We're trying, we're pushing, but we're not there yet. So I think that we have really good success stories of social enterprises and impact ventures, but working collectively, we have a journey to make.
If I may ask you, Samer,
yes,
when you're working collectively, can you give an example, and where are because you're saying we have a long way to go in Lebanon, but one, you have masalan, a non-example, or you have a good example, so that I understand.
So we 2 years ago, actually 3 years ago, myself and some social entrepreneurs were speaking that we need to go together in an association in order to really showcase our needs and our potential, so that maybe we get policies that would support us, a legal status, some export strategies that we could be doing with others. And we launched the Lebanese Social Enterprise Association. Now we have Arc-en-Ciel on board, Artisan de Liban, Shriek, Tripoli. We have several that are together. I'll say within LSE, the good part and the part that we need to work on. So the good part is that when we got together by itself, we got the attention of the Prime Minister office in Lebanon, DIESIS in Italy, and SEUK in the UK. So finally, there is something that represents at some point the social entrepreneurs and their needs. So we can build with this unit a strategy to see how can we grow impact within Lebanon. This is the very good part of it. The part that is challenging is that with the scarcity of resources, these entities, including ourselves, we compete to get those resources. So sometimes it's difficult to really be open, to share, to see what can I contribute versus what I will get. So this is the part that I'm speaking about, where competition sometimes gets into negativity. And we see it in many cases. We're trying to overcome this in building more trust and being more selfless, let's say. It's not obvious for everyone, including myself, but this is where the journey needs to be built.
But I don't think you should be so hard on yourself, because I think when there is a crisis, and you just had a horrendous crisis in Beirut, what you saw, what we always see around the world is when there's a crisis, everyone pulls together. There is massive collaboration. But as I understand from the circumstances for you guys, there was not help from the government. It was just people coming together and solving the problem. And I think that's what happens in any crisis that happens. I mean, I remember there was one in England a few years ago where there was a massive downpour, really bad storm, and a village by the coast was flooded. And the ability for everyone to get together and make a solution was obvious. The challenge we have, and it's everywhere in the world, is when there's not a crisis, how do you motivate and inspire people to continue that collaboration? And Simon Sinek's new book he wrote, which is called, if I remember it rightly, The Infinite Game. Most business organizations globally are set up as finite games about winning and beating the opposition and have some point they're going to get to where they can say they're the best. But life is not like that. I mean, there's not the best elephant out there. They just work in herds and they all work together and they all survive together. So we have to get into our mindset this idea that it is an infinite game. And if you haven't read the book by Simon Sinek, I highly recommend it, because he brings out some good thoughts in it. But just on a small scale, even in my local village 2 years ago, I tried to get them to collaborate to improve the traffic to the village for sales, for shops to survive. No one would work together because they were thinking about their customers and their business and their thing and my little bit. And when you have that, it just gets in the way. I'm part of a group in the UK called Bizmosis, which is an education group for small businesses. And it is a growing business. Now, we started growing at the beginning of the pandemic. Great time to grow a networking business, but we have got new members, so it's okay. But the thing is, the ideal of it is actually people coming together like this and sharing ideas. And I think because of the pandemic and because of the restrictions that it's put on us, the way we have to behave differently, we should leverage this. We should leverage this crisis to bring people together more. And we're just having a conversation in my family at lunchtime. So because of the restrictions, whichever country you're in, there's always moments of cultural celebration. In England, it's Christmas, right? So to bring everyone together at Christmas is going to be contra to the sensible thing to do about coronavirus, because you're going to bring multiple households together and off it goes again. So actually, how can you convince people to give up a tradition, to let go of a tradition for something better? And actually, maybe we have to have something that is so powerful. Either the coronavirus is a stick, but what is the powerful carrot that we can create that everybody then starts to think? And my passion is creating visions that are powerful enough that people from disparate backgrounds and disparate ways of life can actually go, yeah, I can be part of that vision. And I'm in a country that's leaving Europe. Where's the logic of that? We have political parties and things like that are there for the political party first. When I met Nadine, well, I think it was maybe the second or third time we met with Mowgli, there was a guy there whose passion, his motivation, his drive was that Lebanon could afford peace. That's his personal purpose. And I think that is, and I won't mention his name because it's probably inappropriate, but is that to me was like, yeah, everyone could be part of that. But what is a vision you can create, whether it's just a small group in a community or a country or a group of countries? We don't have this visionary piece. And the demonstration we just had in America is like, we've become too tribal, is that thing that, So the collaborative piece is like, how do you create your vision so powerfully that people can give up their personal thing, whatever you'd like to call it, for the bigger picture?
I so much heartfelt, Adrian, and we met 8-9 years ago, and it's super great to see you.
It seems like yesterday.
It's yesterday, but what you're talking about, for me, it is something I'm super passionate about, and it's when the ego falls and the barrier falls, and we're just here to notice each other, accept each other, rather than position each other.
Yeah,
it's easier. Now in Lebanon, with the August Blast is about. It's a trauma. It's a collective trauma we're going in, and I go through the journey of Otto Schaman and there's Thomas Hugel, who are into really putting the senses, the differences, and collectively. It's a big exercise, and it's a time to change, like you said. I completely agree. It's a choice. I feel now these are times as or we say, I'm going to keep my old pattern and not change or make a change on the surface. But for me, truthfully, impact venture, as we call it, it's from the heart, from the guts, from the intuition. If not, if you're doing it for the service or say, I'm
but it's our addiction. It's our addiction, and I use that word deliberately. It's our addiction to what it was like in the past, whether that's culturally, socially, religiously, politically, experientially. We're addicted to being that comfort zone, whatever that was. And when something rips it away, in that circumstance, you have to come up with a new solution.
And there are 3 ways to do it.
Yeah.
3 ways. And trauma is or you go in hyperactivity, or we go numb.
Yeah.
Or that's why pausing, and not only rationally or business-wise, but emotionally pausing and saying where I am and reflecting, and it's a decision. We can go very easily to the old pattern, all of us, including me, or say, and the beauty of it, like you said, there's a lot of platform. I joined 1 or 2 lately. Thousands of people are joining similar messages of enough and being conscious business, but being purposeful or emotionally and going deeper spiritually. So it's a choice that we all are called to make.
I'm sorry to, when I came to your beautiful country, Lebanon, which I adore, and I'm dying to be able to come back there sometime soon. The thing that struck me when I arrived at the airport, because I had never been to a country in the Middle East, so I was a Middle East virgin, and I arrived, and so I saw these 3 banners outside the airport. There was a picture of the Imam, there was a picture of the Pope, and there was a picture of, I can't remember which underwear company it was, but a woman, scantily clad underwear. And I'm looking at it, I was seriously confused. We then got into a minibus, and Jonathan was with me that trip. We then got into a minibus and off we went, and the minibus driver got lost. And I think we ended up at the other end of the Bekaa Valley, probably on the border with Syria. But
wow.
We ended up at this armed depot, which we had to do a U-turn, and eventually we found the hotel. And Jonathan looked at me and said, "Where have you taken me?" And then we met the other mentors that were going to be on the program. And within a few seconds, we were in this group of people that were fascinating and lovely and passionate about collaborating and helping people to grow. And then we were sitting at lunch, and there was 2 young ladies. One was a speech therapist and one was a marketing lady. And the marketing lady, Esra, was scarfed and wearing that, and 23 years old. And next to me was another lady who was in ripped jeans, had makeup on, Western dress, hair all, fancy, smoking and drinking. And I just looked at them and said, "Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I'm the dumb Englishman. I've never been here before, but you're 23 and a girl. You're 23 and a girl. How?" And I was then told 2 stories. I can't remember the lady's name who was the speech therapist. But
already you have a great memory.
Esther told me the story of how she met her husband. And
yes, and he was with us.
Yeah, and he came and he visited us his last day. And all of my preconceptions, all of my prejudices, I suppose you just have to say, disappeared in a moment, because I suddenly realized what another culture was doing and how it was working. And so to get this vision right, to get something so big and powerful, if we don't let go of our sort of determination for it to go our way, but start to say the result that I want to achieve is this, whether it be a social enterprise or whatever it may be, but this is the result, I think, and the benefit of this result to everyone. How can you help me? How can you help shape it? And then give people the freedom to contribute. I know it's your baby, but it's like giving people the freedom to contribute, but keep holding the vision, because then you adopt anything that takes you towards it and you reject anything that doesn't. And to be a leader and manager in today's world, that's where we've got to be, because we have to get the contribution from everyone.
And that's spot on.
I do apologize. I just got
passionate. No, it's super. No, it's super. And I remember that we have the chance to have Andre, Sam, Adrian, Tony, all you. One of the key things that I see in what you're saying is that you in Mugli mentoring, what we create is that safe environment for people to go down, let your baby down on judgments, and get to know each other humanly. All we need is be heard and listened and seen. I see you, you see me, and accepting. So yeah, sorry, it's about the community and how it's set up that makes a big difference. And usually I see in many performances, we skip that and we go for action and doing things. Sorry, Tony, you wanted to say something. And
yeah, I wanted to add on what Adrian, I like what Adrian was saying, you know, the draw, the pull for a vision would be great. In the meantime, if I may suggest, and probably Samer you're doing or other people, you do what you can with what you have, in a sense that if there's a project and you can find another entity with which you compete sometimes, maybe you can collaborate and start building that trust in preparation for that big organic vision that's going to surface at some point, or you come up with it, or somebody else comes up with it, or some inspirational thing happens. In the meantime, one of the ways is probably to practice trust by doing things together with people you most probably compete with, because they also are driven by maybe the same values or the same inspirations. And the question is, and that's probably what was the original question for me, is how do you collaborate? Is to make an effort to collaborate. If there's a bid together on it, if you win it and part of your supply chain, you can get somebody to work with you on it, you do that. You're probably doing it, but even if you're doing it with the brothers and sisters, maybe now stretch to the cousins, and then later on to the extended village. And I'm not saying literally, but top down with the association that you have created is very good, because outsiders like to see unity, like to see one voice, like to see people collaborating. And that's on the strategy or policy level, but on the ground level, I'm sure you're doing stuff, but my guess is the more you do, the more trust until the big event happens. And then, like in Adrian's village, everyone, once they build trust, and if there's a big project, it'll be easier for them to do it.
Exactly. So as you said, Tony, so I think to say it in I'll give you an example of something that happened practically. I always believe that it goes back of the why are you doing it. Sometimes we forget why are we doing it. When you go especially into competition, you become like, I want to win the competition, but why am I doing it? Like, why did I go into this 10 years ago? So it began to build trust at the beginning of LSE, the Lebanese Social Enterprise Association. There was a lot of, let's say, suspicion or tension or what's going to happen. But when after each challenge we overcome it together, you create more positive bonds. And I also experienced it with NGOs that work with persons with disabilities in Lebanon. So when we started in this sector, first, nobody knew about what we were doing. Then when we began to work into this, we were, let's say, surprised of a lot of negativity from some NGOs. And then we had honest discussions. We were always open to collaborations. We had honest discussions when, if you want to go into details, it's easy to find ways to comment or to criticize. But then one of the discussions I had with one of the biggest NGOs in disabilities in Lebanon that wasn't positive about having us within the stakeholders. I told them, like, we have one of the highest rates of unemployment among persons with disabilities that can work and want to work in the region and in the world. So can you solve the problem alone? And they said, definitely not. We're not able to solve 5% of the problem. And we said, for us, it's the same. We cannot solve the problem alone. You started this because you wanted to contribute in solving it, and we did the same. So if we're gonna criticize each other, we're not gonna go anywhere. But if we collaborate together in a certain structure that is smart, let's say, not overlapping, not duplicating, or not even like going into the tiny details, we'll find a way to do it. And now we're in the same committee that is being built, and that would be helpful for a new project that will be upcoming. I'm not going to speak about it before it launches, related to buildings that are accessible for persons with disabilities. So when we go back to the why, are we doing it for personal legacy? We're going to fight. Are we doing it for making a lot of money under the name of social impact? We're going to fight. But if we really go back to the why of doing good for society and ourselves, we'll find ways of collaboration.
Thank you, Samer. Thank you, Adrian, for your contribution tonight to our session. And I hope we will host you soon. Thank you also, Tony, for joining us and adding some value and questions to our guests. Thank you, Nadine, and thank you, Samer. I just wanted to add that our community, entrepreneurship community, is based on common values and common vision. And that's why we also encourage co-opetition. What Tony was saying about collaborating with your competition, we use the term co-opetition, cooperating with your competition. And this can happen when we have the same values, or we respect the values of our competitor, and they do the same also. And we agree on the vision and the plan and strategy on how we can collaborate and cooperate in the future. And we've done it many times. Actually, when we launched Entrepreneurship Summit, everyone was telling me, oh, so you are competing with Berytech and ArabNet and Alt City and UK Lebanon Tech Hub and mostly all of the ecosystem. But what happened during Entrepreneurship Summit, we actually gathered all the entrepreneurship ecosystem. They were active partners with us. They organized their own panels and activities during the summit. And that's how we proved that we are not competing, we are collaborating. We have a big ecosystem. They have needs that not one entity can meet or also solve as problems and challenges. And that's what we expect from all our members and community, to collaborate hand in hand and to explore opportunities together so we can help and serve all this community. Thank you, everyone. And we see you.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you for the happy birthday.
You want another time at the end too?
No, thank you.
Thanks, Andre.
Nice to hear everyone. Hopefully next time we will be more participating. Thank you.
Happy to have you here.